All right, so I'd like to say something more about faith. Just before I was talking about implicit faith. So implicit faith is a perfectional stage. It's the ideal standard. We have to all aspire to come to that platform of implicit faith, but it most likely won't be a starting point for many of us, let's say, unless you're a Nityasiddha devotee. So what is the starting point? I would like to suggest that the starting point is having, and this is acceptable, is having provisional faith. Provisional, according to the dictionary, means arranged or existing for the present, possibly to be changed later. Another way of looking, in other words, I don't think it's realistic for a neophyte devotee to, I'll back up here. I don't think there's anything wrong with entering into Krishna consciousness initially with that mood of provisional faith, because that's realistically that's all you're going to really be able to have until you advance, until you get realizations. You can aspire for, appreciate the mood and the sentiment of implicit faith, but until you are on a realized platform, your faith actually is provisional. And I believe that what I'm saying is supported by the statement of Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where he says, Ado Shraddha Tato Sadhusanga Tata Bhajana Kriya Tata Anartha Nivritti Shat Tata, you become steady, Nishta Tata Nishta Tata Ruchi Shakti, and Bhava and Prema. So the idea is that, in the beginning, one has a preliminary desire for self-realization, and then with some, appreciation or faith, and then that you adoshraddha tato sadhu sangha, then you associate with devotees who are already engaged in the process, tato sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, and then when as a result of having a little bit of an interest and initial faith and getting inspired by the association, you take up the process. Then you're willing to make a commitment to engage in the process. You take initiation from a spiritual master, and then you're formally, committed to engaging in devotional service. And when you engage in devotional service in that way, then you start making some actual concrete, tangible progress, and you become anartha nivritti. You become free from certain unwanted habits, bad habits, materialistic ways of thinking and living. So, in other words, and it's progressive. As you continue on with that engaging in devotional service with that serious commitment, you make further and further advancement. And what happens is your faith, it becomes transformed from provisional faith to implicit faith. Actually, that's my understanding of how devotional service works. Going from shraddha to prema is the process of having your faith evolve from provisional faith to implicit faith. When somebody's on the platform of prema bhakti, they have implicit faith, right? But it doesn't happen overnight. You start off as a neophyte, and with shraddha, just some appreciation or attraction or like that, respect, interest in devotion and Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and you have some provisional faith. Yeah, maybe this could be a good thing. Let's see, but you don't know for sure. You don't have that realization. That's okay. But then you just make the experiment. You do what you got to do, and then as a result of seriously applying yourself to the process, when you get the good results, then your faith, as I said, it transforms step by step from provisional faith to implicit faith. And so I guess why I'm making this point is, I'd hate to, I wouldn't want to see anybody feel discouraged, that they feeling guilty or inadequate, that I don't have implicit faith, No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. If in the early stages or in a if you're not there, it's okay. Krishna consciousness is so wonderful. It's so glorious that any connection you have with Krishna consciousness, if you keep it and you stay with it in an inoffensive way, you're going to make progress. So don't be down on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be, feel frustrated, guilty, inadequate if you're not at the stage of implicit faith. Just be, happy where you are, and then just sincerely engage yourself in devotional service. From wherever you're at, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. That's what we're assured, that the process works, right? The process works. If you associate with Krishna, we're going to get purified. If we chant and we take, do the things we're supposed to do, we're going to get purified. As we get purified, we'll have our doubts will gradually fade away into oblivion, and we'll have our faith, as I said, will transform from provisional faith to implicit faith. So if you're not at that platform of implicit faith, if you come across things when you're reading the Bhagavatam that you go, whoa, how could that's like too far out. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just put it in the car park, and just put it aside for the time being. Just focus on the stuff that you can relate to, that is meaningful to you, that makes sense to you, that really sounds right and feels right to you, and just do those things in Krishna consciousness that you can do. Take prasadam. I'm not being, facetious when I say that. It's an important thing. Prabhupada wanted us to only eat prasadam, so everybody can do that. If you try a little bit, only eat prasadam. And make sure that whatever you're gonna eat, it's vegetarian. You offer it to Krishna. Only eat prasadam. That's like step one. Chant Hare Krishna. You can do that. So we should do those two things. Actually, I have a whole notebook, which maybe I'll share in a later morning, but it's 88 pages long. It's just excerpts from lectures Prabhupada gave where we would emphasize that one point, that Krishna consciousness begins with the tongue. The tongue has two functions. One is tasting and the other is vibrating. And Prabhupada would repeatedly say in so many different words that if one just does those two things, if one just uses the tongue to only chant Hare Krishna or talk about Krishna, things related to Krishna, and only eats prasadam, he said just by that process alone, one will have Krishna in his grip. At least in one lecture, he actually used those words. The verse he would be always expanding upon was that famous verse from the Padma Purana, Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Gadayam Indriye, Sevan Mukhe Hi Jivado Svayam Eva Sparatya, that Krishna can't be understood by the gross material senses, blunt material senses. He's not understood by material senses, okay? But Sevan Mukhe Hi Jiva, Sevan Mukhe, service, mouth service, Sevan Mukhi, he certainly, Jiva, the tongue, Ado, beginning with the tongue, Svayam Eva, he's revealed. Krishna reveals himself to one who engages in devotion, one who engages in tongue in devotional service, and the functions of the tongue are tasting and vibrating. So that's the starting point. Start there. Start your, quest to come to the platform of implicit faith right there. Chant Hare Krishna, be a committed Hare Krishna mantra chanter, and be a committed prasadam taker, and then just keep doing that, and just things are will get better. Things will improve from that point.
And so the premise is Ishvara Parama Krishna.
Oh yeah. Okay. Now, I'm going to relate this to another way of presenting the same idea of provisional faith. Is another term for that same thing is provision is a working hypothesis. So the definition of a working hypothesis is this. It says a process begins with a working hypothesis. This is a direct statement of the research idea. For example, a plant biologist may think that plant height may be affected by applying different fertilizers. So they might say plants with different fertilizers will grow to different heights. All right, so in other words, the analogy is this. We're not pure devotees, right? We're starting off, we're neophytes. Accept Krishna consciousness as a working hypothesis, a tentative hypothesis. Just like he's talking about plants with different fertilizers will grow to different heights. That's their working hypothesis? Our working hypothesis is, the hypothesis we're starting off with is that Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. That Ishvara Parama Krishna is the supreme controller. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit, his body is eternal. Satchit Ananda Vigraha. He's the form of eternal blissful knowledge. Anadir Adir Govinda. He's the original. He's the origin of all origins and the cause of all causes. That's our working hypothesis, and we by engaging in devotional service. The engagement in devotional service is like performing the experiment to test to see if this working hypothesis is true or not. And in science you have your hypothesis, and you perform your experiments, and then you make your observations, and you make your conclusion. So in the same way, in that sense, Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada used to refer to it as a science. Well, it is a science in that sense. Our hypothesis is just that. Krishna is the supreme controller. He's the eternal form of blissful knowledge. He's the origin of everything, and the cause of all causes. That's the working hypothesis. The experiment is you engage in devotional service, and if by engaging in devotional service, as we've been saying, you get purified. Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sabha Kabanaya Sravana Sudachita Kodadaya. Then as you get purified, the transcendental knowledge becomes awakened. And as the transcendental knowledge becomes awakened, you realize you go beyond an intellectual or academic understanding of this philosophy. Don't get me wrong. Just to have an intellectual or academic understanding of this philosophy is awesome. It's great, but it's not. We have to clearly understand it's not the goal. It's not where we want to be after. Eventually, we want to be not on gyan. We want vigyan. Vigyan is what we're after. So the idea is that you start with this working hypothesis, and you engage in the process seriously, and you will go from gyan to vigyan. That's the whole process of Krishna consciousness, going from gyan to vigyan. And I'll conclude by reading few sentences from a purport Prabhupada in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Prabhupada makes this point. Okay. The Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge. Here it comes. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna, because he's satisfied with pure devotional service. Means he's engaged, he's doing devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. Same thing, that's when you're there. When you have realized knowledge or transcendental knowledge. That's why Prabhupada was such a potent and effective preacher, because he was speaking from a platform of realization. It says, by mere academic knowledge, one can easily be deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. See, so that's where we start off with. The neophyte, he can be confused by apparent contradictions and deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. So it is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation may be as good as gold to others, but they have no greater value than pebbles or stones. In other words, when you as you advance in Krishna consciousness becomes something much more than just a bunch of ideas to you. It's an experience. You're living it. It's a living experience. It's not that, at least for Prabhupada, the things Prabhupada spoke, He wasn't just like a professor at a university who's just, very expert at presenting the ideas. No, he was presenting an experience. And devotees could feel that. Devotees could feel that, wait a second, this man, he's not just talking about this, he's experiencing it. And that's why we were inspired to try to take it up. And so, and that's that's what really is, all of us are supposed to, we have to try to do that. We have to try to become Vigyanis, not Gyanis, but Vigyanis. And when we do that, then we'll be able to effectively not just practice Krishna consciousness, but then we'll be able to spread the Krishna consciousness. Actually, this is the final thing I'll say this morning. This whole pandemic is a very perverted reflection of how Krishna consciousness is supposed to work. And I'll being a little sarcastic, but I'll break that down for you. The pandemic is such that somebody gets infected, and then if you associate with them, a little bit closely, then you can get infected like that, and you get that disease too. You get COVID, and you die. But Krishna consciousness is supposed to work like that in a positive way, that, if somebody's got infected with Krishna consciousness, with pure devotion, not COVID, but pure devotional service, Krishna prema, and you associate with somebody who has got Krishna prema, you're supposed to get infected, you see? And then you get infected, and you get Krishna prema, and then when somebody associates with you, they get Krishna prema, and that's how it's supposed to work. Huh? And that's how Lord Chaitanya spread Krishna consciousness throughout South India. People become, by associating with a pure devotee, you get pure devotional service. And then when you got pure devotional service, you can give it to others. Actually, I will read one final thing for you. And then I just read this morning. Today was the disappearance day of Mahesh Pandit and Udaran Thakur. So when I was reading something to the devotees about Udaran Thakur, I guess Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami made a statement about these glorious devotees of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda in general. He said, Prabhupada goes, after glorifying Udaran Thakur as an exalted devotee of Lord Nityananda who worshipped him in all ways, Krishnadas Kaviraj praises all of Sri Nityananda Prabhu's devotees. No one can count, and this is what he says, no one can count the unlimited followers of Nityananda Prabhu. I have mentioned some of them simply for my own purification. As branches of Lord Nityananda's tree, these eternal associates are full of the ripened fruits of Krishna prema. They gave these fruits to everyone, flooding them with pure love of God. These devotees have unlimited strength to give eternal, unalloyed love of Krishna. They can offer anyone Krishna prema. See, so that's how the movement spread during the time of Lord Chaitanya, and really, be honest with you, that's the only way it's going to spread now. Some of the followers of Prabhupada have to become these kind of devotees. They have to become devotees who have the fruits. Or how would I say here? Are full of the ripened fruits. We have to become full of the ripened fruits of Krishna prema. And then we can give these fruits to everyone, flooding them with pure love of God. And to the degree that we advance, we'll have unlimited strength. We'll have strength to give eternal, unalloyed love of Krishna to anyone. And we'll say more about this tomorrow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.